Kia ora tātai te whānau. A tō i a tainu tapatū ki te moana māwai e tō māku e tō mawhakatau e tō. Whakarongo ake au ki te taho te rangi. E tarawai nuku, he tarawai rangi. Pūhia te ahi e nau mai e tāne kakau tau ai te au e piku a whiti. Kia mātaki na koe e te tini e te mano. Nāku koe e tiki atu te wānui a tāne, mīroi e tāne, koko e tāne. Turu haere ana te waiatika amaru ānuku e patu ana mai te kōmuri hau, na runga na mai o wai hihi o wai haha ko tīringa tēnā o tainu. Ura te rā, wera te rā. Ngā tangata e whakaririka mamau ki te taura. Kia tū mātātoro atu taku tū mātātoro, ihu waka tūruke, paneke. Hara mai te toki, haumi e, hui e, tāki e. Tēnā koutou katoa. Tuatahi ake ka tika. Kore e mimiti haere ngā mihi ki te rungarawa ai o matua kore te tīmatanga me te whakaaronu. E rere tonu ngā mihi kia rātou kia rātou te kāhui ariki pai mārire, kia rātou pai mārire ki tō tātou kingi. Noku ne kawe ana mihi kia koutou. E ai ki te kingi ana kōrero kia tau te manaakitanga rungi a koutou katoa. E kore au e ware i a rātou kua wehe atu ki te wahangu o te pō, a rātou kua wehe ki tua te ārai, a rātou kua hoki atu ki te wairua, haere, a hare ati rā, ore te pō, ore te ao, haumi e, hui e, a tāiki e. Te arawa waka, te arawa whānui, te arawa tanga, tēnei au e tuku mihi atu ki a koutou katoa i tēnei rā. Nā koutou, me o koutou whenua, o koutou maunga, o koutou awa, roto moana hoki, te arawa tāngata, kei te mihi atu nei. O tira ki a tātou katoa, e kara pine mai nei, i raro i te tuanui o tō tātou nei whare, i raro i te kaupapa o te rangi, o te kaupapa o te wā, tēnā koutou katoa. Nō ku te waimarie ki te tū, i wainganui a koutou i tēnei rā, i mua i tō koutou hara mai ki roto i te rima nei, i tatarua ki au, i te mea i te tino āwangawanga nei au, ki te tū i mui a koutou ngā tino mātanga o tēnei kaupapa o te rongoā. I'm both humbled and honoured to present today. And to present Tāwhiwhi Tāmau kia mau ki tō waiora. The kōrero is a modification of a PhD thesis I wrote a couple of years ago, which introduced the Tāwhiwhi Tāmau model of health. As a disclaimer, can I first say that in no way do I at all claim to be a mātanga in rongoa. That's you. The most I've done is make a couple of lemon drinks and chuck some honey in it. That's probably the extent of my rongoa knowledge. But that being said, lately, so as Dale's spoken about playing touch and all that kind of stuff, I think my legs are young, but they're probably not. So Mum's had to come over with some kawakawa every now and again to fix these hamstrings up. But I was approached by members of the team who put this wonderful wānanga together to kōrero as the person in my role. So to Deb, to Pollyann, and all the team, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Dale. Thank you for the intro, but then also thank you for
taking your jacket.
Yes, and my jacket. Thank you for kind of leading on to how old I wasn't, or how old I'm not. Hoi anō, ka tika, tēnei te mihi nunui atu kia koutou katoa. So, the thesis that I wrote, it started with a comprehensive review of a whole bunch of different health models and created and which have been used in different contexts around the world to address health from different perspectives. Models that expanded on what's called the medical model of health and their understanding, and their simple understanding, that health is merely or simply the absence of disease, which can be cured or can be detected and cured by science. And I see you all as Māori going, I can see your faces right now. And that's the reason why many models were created, especially the one that I'm going to talk about. Then I looked at other models that have been created by Indigenous people around the world. But I'm not going to delve too deep into that, simply because I don't know if I can say this around here, but well, they're well known and they're colonial in nature, which is probably the part that could get me in trouble. They're redundant. A lot of them are redundant, or they're outside of the scope of our wānanga of this last couple of days. But I do need to mention that I did spend a bit of time actually reviewing and evaluating a whole bunch of international models and models that were created for our Indigenous people around the world. But a lot of those models were actually created by the colonizer and forced upon us. And I'm not saying us as Māori, I'm saying iwi take around the world. And simply, we know that they do not work. And we also know that the underlying and root causes of Indigenous ill health are colonisation, legislation, lack of access to proper care, barriers to the right care, institutionalised racism, both conscious and unconscious. We need to know that there are some people who don't actually mean to purport and to adopt racist practices. They just do, and they're unaware of it. And it is these inequities in health that I speak of that have led to the creation of Indigenous health models, and many of those models actually encourage and promote the sharing of knowledge, and in particular the sharing of Indigenous knowledge, which when I think of the kaupapa of this wānanga over this last couple of days, that's exactly that. Okay, us as Māori sharing our stuff with Māori. Kia oro tonu ai te rongo a Māori, kia oro tonu ai te mātauranga, kia oro tonu ai te mōhiotanga me te mārama hoki. So, like I said, I'm just going to skip through some stuff because, yeah, like I said, don't want to drag up some mamai. However, it appears that us as Māori, we are not alone in this, and there are, in this rangahau that I did, I found a couple of pieces of research and two statements in particular. And one was by Chino and De Bruyne, which came out of somewhere in North America. Said it is time for Indigenous people to not only develop tribal programs, but to also define and integrate underlying theoretical frameworks for public health application. Okay? Basically saying it's time for us to do our stuff. Okay? And then Lucero and colleagues from North America as well said that strategies to promote lifestyle change must be specific to a specific group and the population as a whole, and it must be sensitive to the differences in culture between Indigenous groups within a country. So it was with these two statements in mind that for me both inspired and justified me writing a PhD to create something for my iwi. As a researcher, or those of you who are researchers, this was the equivalent of me finding a couple of needles in a haystack. Something that justified me creating something for my iwi. So, with that in mind, the kaupapa itself began to take its initial form, and there's been already established definitions of rangahau kaupapa Māori, first introduced by Professor Graham Smith, but then also Professor Linda Smith has done similar mahi, and it basically coined it by Māori, for Māori, with Māori, and we know that now. But you know, by Māori, for Māori, with Māori hasn't been a statement that's been around forever. Graham Smith wrote that in his 1997 PhD. So for me, what I wanted to do is create something as a member of Waikato, doing something with people of Waikato, for the people of Waikato, which then reclassified my rangahau from being rangahau kaupapa Māori to rangahau kaupapa Waikato. And so within that, I needed to think of a methodology in a way how I could kohi marama, kohi mōhiotanga. So the Pākehā terminology coins it semi-structured interviewing. There's a couple of laughs here. But us as Māori, what does that mean? It just means wānanga. Right? I wānanga hia I ngā mātanga o te iwi. So I was very lucky to kōrero and wānanga with different mātanga to collect info and this māramatanga in a kōrero based style, to ascertain the opinion of the people and what the people needed from a model that was going to serve them. For me, the kanohi ki te kanohi approach was far better than a survey or a Likert scale, the 1 to 5, 1 to 10 scale, because for me it allowed me to connect deeper with those mātanga. It allowed for natural flow of kōrero, and our people can kōrero, and it allowed this natural flow just to come out, and man, it was beautiful. I was very lucky, and I'm glad I had the foresight to record it. So as a taonga, I'm giving those kōrero back to the whānau, not to the individuals themselves, because they won't want it. We know that, our people are too humble. I'm going to give it back to them. Anyway, but it also allowed me to make a deeper connection to the information itself. The mātanga themselves, I likened them to taniwha, in the sense that, some weren't that very good looking, but in the sense that taniwha are our spiritual guardians who have looked after our people and looked after us for centuries and centuries and centuries. Each of the taniwha were from different piko of the Waikato awa, and from our different harbours. And I was fortunate to wānanga with many of the taniwha in their own rua, in their own taniwha pit. People like our king, leaders and prominent figures, academics, holders of tribal knowledge, but then also Māori health practitioners, and a couple of rongoā practitioners as well, within that kōrero, and they gave me what they thought a model should look like. And that type of kōrero, that's 100% promoted by a lot of knowledge-sharing frameworks. So, what was created was this thing. Now, when I had it, it was just this rudimentary coloured pencil drawing. But I need to mihi to Pou Parore. Is he actually here? Did he come? Pou Parore is one of our principal advisors, Mātauranga Māori at ACC, and he turned it into this wonderful image that it is today. So, tēnei te mihi atu ki ai. But the major outcome of it was the development of the Tāwhiwhi Tāmau model of Waiora. Ai ki te Māori, hauora and Waiora have been used interchangeably for a number of years to mean health, whilst oranga is commonly defined as well-being. Tāwhiwhi Tāmau has been classified, or I've classified it, as a model of Waiora, as opposed to a model of hauora, for a couple of reasons. The term hauora refers mainly to human health, and it was or according to Dr. Ihirangi Heke, was it used in a context, or in that context, around about the 1950s and 60s, when health literacy was improving and became one of the key foci of society. Waiora encompasses a more wider holistic definition of health, and beyond just, like I said, human health, but there's also acknowledgement to tāne. and all the feats that he achieved as Tāne Mahuta, Tāne Matua, Tāne Te Pūkenga, and Tāne Te Waiora. And Tāne's role pertaining to life, to well-being, and to prosperity, no e rao ngā mea. Professor Tom Roa, for those of you from Waikato and Maniapoto, will know exactly who that man is. He quoted he puna kupu, he mano āwhenua, when he said, Waiora is defined as life-giving water. And I know I'm preaching to the converted here when I say that, but that was a key element of Waiora for my iwi. Also during the wānanga process, wairua and wairuatanga were discussed heavily. Brad Totorewa, who's part of Kingi Tuheitia entourage, he explained the notion that wairua, or wairua, is formed when, at the moment of conception, when the waiuriuri of the pāpā meets the kākano, which is sitting in the waikaho of the mama, thus creating wairua. So the notion that we are wairua beings having a physical experience was also discussed quite heavily. So therefore, a model for Waikato that uplifted Waiora, naturally needed to encompass Wairua. But then once again, that's for us as Māori. We know that. We know that we are Wairua first. Tāwhiwhi Tāmau, it utilises iwi tikanga, kōrero, our narratives, and our ways of being and our history as being determining factors of our well-being. Our natural environment, our connection and our hononga to the taiao and to Papa Tuanuku, our belief systems, all those things we need, it uses them to build and to maintain the wairua and the waiora of themselves, but then also the waiora of the people. It comprises multiple facets, each using these elements taken from, like I said, the different stories in the kōrero and just our beliefs and ways of being. The name Tāwhiwhi Tāmau comes from the Pai Mārire, or the Tariao, most commonly called the Pai Mārire, but known as the Tariao. The principal faith of the Kinitanga, adopted by Tāwhiao after requesting it from Te Ua Haumene of Taranaki. So at this moment I need to stop and mihi to the people of Taranaki. Mihi to Te Ua Haumene and all his people for the influence that they have had on our wairuatanga for the last 160 odd years. Tāwhiao, he sought to take the teachings of Te Ua Haumene and to add them to the mōhiotanga of the Christian faiths of the missionaries who he grew up around, but then also his knowledge of the whare wānanga that he had, being the son of the rangatira. So he'd come through that process as well. The eternal pursuit of the individual and of the collective to seek and retain knowledge, wisdom, and waiora is reflected in the name and in the whiti of the karakia, from whence it originates. And the whiti goes, Homeira, kia purutia, kia here here a tāwhiwhi tāmau kāpai. Okay, so through that that whole, or that particular whiti anyway, the individual is seeking blessings, as we are seeking learnings and we're seeking well-being from the atua. And that process of, it's reflecting that eternal process of kia whiwhi kia mau, kia whiwhi kia mau. Okay? Seeking and holding and retaining all the knowledge, the mōhiotanga, and everything that our atua and our taiao gives us. The illustration itself consists of a taniwha holding aloft the niho taniwha, really similar to how the Greek god Atlas is seen holding the globe upon his shoulders. And the image represents the individual holding, in this case, Waikatotanga, or his own iwitanga. it represents the multiple forms and the facets and whatever that means for them as a person, but for what it means for them as an individual, not only to support it, because somebody needs to uphold our mōhiotanga, somebody needs to uphold our māramatanga, but then also as a protective mechanism. Okay, in this sense, and I think this is a really, really poor metaphor or an analogy, like an umbrella. Okay? An umbrella is useless if no one's holding it. Okay, same as this. Okay, somebody needs to uphold the waiora of our iwi constructs, of what our iwi is, and who our people are, in order for it to be able to serve and protect us. It also represents, the taniwha itself, sorry. As we know, they are an iwi wairua. They can move and take shape and form of anything around it. And so the taniwha is represented in there, but then is also representative of us as individuals. And it reaffirms, like I said before, we are wairua first, having physical experiences. It also represents the waiora and the role played by them, like how I said, in upholding the waiora of our own iwi. Tāwhiwhi Tāmau actually embeds the waiora of both the taniwha and the individual as being integral and essential elements of the model itself. And because taniwha are an iwi wairua, there is that inseparability between us and them. Okay? For us, and we have been kind of hoodwinked by some stories saying that taniwha are kino, okay? Only if you disrespect the taniwha. If you respect the taniwha will look after you. Okay? These things guided our people across the vast ocean, okay? Swam next to and in front of our waka to get our people here. So those things aren't kino. Okay? They're only kino if we disrespect them. In addition, taniwha are predominant out in our tikanga, in our kōrero, our haka, our waiata, and our whakairo. But in this context, I've used it, and when Te Heuheu at Pukawa, at Hinanaki to Hinanaki Tai, he paid Potatau, or he was Te Wherowhero at the time, he paid Te Wherowhero the ultimate compliment when he gave a kiwaha and a whakatauki. And part of that whakatauki says, he piko he taniwha Waikato taniwharau. So the inclusion of something for Waikato, or as a model for Waikato, needed to have a taniwha, and it was a natural, it was a given. And so, moving back up to the Niho taniwha itself, as a pyramid is constructed, each level is reliant on the strength and the quality of those levels below it, to keep the structure upright. And Tāwhiwhi Tāmau illustrates that the Niho taniwha, like I said, is a metaphor for waiora, and each of those levels, so we've got purple, blue, and I'll explain those, the black, white and red and the yellow as we go through, they are all dependent on the strength of those structures beneath. And the taniwha's purpose, like how I said, is to uphold, to promote and to maintain the waiora. For without waiora, the taniwha itself is no good. These particular elements are symbolic of Waikato and of Tainui. However, I am going to acknowledge that these things are held in regard by many iwi. So, neira te mihi aroha, atu kia koutou katoa me o koutou iwi, mauria mai o koutou iwi, mauria mai o koutou mōhiotanga, mauria mai o koutou tūpuna, ki te areare mai ki ngā whakaritenga o tēnei o ngā tauira. And also, I actually encourage you, as you bring your tūpuna with you, I actually encourage you to think about yourself, your practice, your iwi and your hapu, and how you may apply the fundamental concepts of Tāwhiwhi Tāmau. So we take it away from just being about Waikato, and we put it into your own individual context as well. Something that I sought to do is I wanted to disrupt the deficit-based thinking and approaches that have been common in many health models around the world. So many health models tell us that Māori are this, Indigenous people are that, and they concentrate on the negative statistics. And we know that us as Māori and as iwi take are constantly overrepresented in negative stats. Okay, I wanted to turn that narrative around, flip it on its head, and say, nah, we're more than just poor incarceration stats. We're more than just poor social stats. We are way better than that. Moving on. And the engagement and the connection with knowledge and practice, as I've seen today in some of the kōrero that have been said, although extremely important, it's probably more important that we pass that knowledge on to others. Pass that knowledge on to each other, pass that knowledge on to our tamariki, our mokopuna, ngā reanga ki te haramai. Ki te kore, ka mate te mōhiotanga, te mātauranga, ka mate te māramatanga. Ki te mate te māramatanga, ka mate te iwi. Okay? And that's not what we want. Okay? We want to keep our people alive, and we keep our people alive by teaching them the ways of our tupuna. Within the model itself, although it's two-dimensional at the moment, there are 5 different layers of it, and many levels within each of those layers. Like I said, each of those levels is supported by the levels below. But Tāwhiwhi Tāmu actually acknowledges other models of health, those ones that have been beneficial to us, and I don't want to dethrone those models at all. All I am doing is taking that mōhiotanga of that iwi take research from America, and they said, right, we've created pan-Māori models. Okay, all I'm trying to do is make something specific to an iwi. And we know that Wairora itself is multi-layered and multifaceted, and this actually determines that us as individuals, we have the ability and we have the pukenga to actually determine our own input and our own contribution to Wairora, not just Wairora of ourselves, like I said, Wairora in its greatest sense. And each layer, I've called them paparanga, and each paparanga addresses a particular element of health deemed central to the Wairora of Māori, but in particular, there's a couple of cases here in particular to Waikato. And the concept of paparanga or layers portrays holistic health in ways that are similar to the walls of te whare tapawha, the ringa of te wheke, and the whetū of te pai mahutanga. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to do. I've tried to take what they've done, actually promote them, and say, actually, this is how we can do something for in a specific context. So, driven by the tongikura, kia niwha te ngākau ki ngā mahi atawhai o te iwi, or be steadfast and resolute of heart in the care and protection of our iwi, but acutely aware that I alone couldn't care for or protect the entire iwi by myself. I set to create a model that could do something like that, and to be the vehicle towards Wairora. So the first layer or paparanga I present is te paparanga o te iwi, the iwi layer. Kōrero with the taniwha during the information phase identified whakapapa as being paramount, and our shared whakapapa at that. And our societal constructs of whānau, marae, hapu and iwi. The base layer of the niho taniwha, and in this particular case the iwi, is the whānau, both immediate and extended, and recognises the quality that each person contributes to the Wairora of the whānau. With that, it brings to mind the whakatauki, or the tongikura of Kingi Tuheitia, amohi ake te tau o te whānau e kōkiri ai ngā whiu o te ao. Hold fast to the joys of family, and we will overcome any situation. Moving up is the marae. The marae is comprised of many different or closely related whānau. Each niho within the whānau represents the individual, up in that blue level there, each niho represents all the different whānau of the marae and how we are connected to each other. Our whakapapa links, which are critical in supporting each other, nurturing of children, and ensuring the successes of each whānau. And in a sense, and we all know this, this kiwaha nō te raurau, nōku te raurau, ko rai te iwi. With my food basket and with your food basket, the iwi will be sustained. Then above the marae is the political unit of the hapu. Now, we know that hapu have been, and we know that some hapu are just in a marae alone, but traditionally, and in times gone by, hapu were also made of different marae, connected to each other, and all descendants of a common ancestor. This little micro-colony, I suppose they could be called, all had their different rights and controls, and were viewed as the most important of the political groupings. And then the uppermost level, in yellow there, is representative of the iwi itself. Its strength, its capacity, and all that is directly dependent on the constructs below. As the iwi serves its members themselves must be strong, we must be knowledgeable, we must be capable, we must be connected to ensure that we all have collective prosperity and collective growth. This includes the passing on of knowledge to the next generation, and also sharing that knowledge that we have right without the whole iwi. And with that, I am driven to think of tupuna of mine Te Puia Herangi when she said, mahi a te mahi hei painga mo te iwi. Do the mahi for the betterment of the people. And finally, in this paparanga, our shared whakapapa renders us inseparable. Okay? Because we have shared whakapapa, we cannot be divided. The sharing and nurturing of each other to ensure collective well-being and collective growth. And then on the outside, you'll see a couple of little borders there. That is representative of a tongikura of Tāwhiao when he said, ko tahi te kā ho ka whati ki te kā puia kore e whati. And I see them written on our bags. So I saw that and I went, here we go. So hopefully people know what that means. But it means when reeds stand alone, they are vulnerable, but when bound together, they are unbreakable. And basically saying us as iwi members, as whānau, as hapu members, we need to stay together. Okay, kia oro tonu ai tātou katoa. The next one, te paparanga o te kingitanga. So for us as Waikato, it was identified, or the kingitanga was identified as crucial to our identity and who we are as a people. The lessons, the values, the practices of the members of our kahuiariki, both past and present, are held close to the hearts of the people of our iwi. The institution itself is key and critical component of the iwi, and it remains a valued taonga and was deemed critical in the design of a model for our people. The people of Waikato and of Tainui, we remain resolute to the intergenerational commitment made by Te Whero in 1858-ish. Now that date can be argued, some say 56, 57, 58. But however, he did make an intergenerational commitment. And the people require the kingitanga and its guiding principles and the various tongikura, some of the ones I've said before, and whakatauki as key components of this model. It also re-emphasises that us as Waikato and as Tainui, being the kaitiaki of this taonga, it's an outward expression of gratitude to everybody, to your tupuna who were there at Pukawa, who gave us, or who had the faith in us and bestowed in us the honour of being kaitiaki of this taonga. It's not our taonga, this taonga belongs to you. Okay? Our job is to tiaki this taonga. Therefore, the movement itself was considered critical to the waiora of our people. The niho on the bottom there, the 7 niho in purple, those are representative of the guiding mātāpono, or the guiding values of the kingitanga. Whakaiti, whakaponorangi Māori, aroha, manaakitanga, kotahitanga, and mahitahi. And this image here posits aroha being there, right in the middle. The centerpiece within the layer and supports Tāwhiao's tongikura ko tō hoa haere ko te aroha me te rangi Māori. May love and peace be your travel companions. The 5 niho above represent another one of Tāwhiao's tongikura. Mākua nā tōku nei whare e hanga ko ngā pau o roto, he maho, he patate, ko te tāhuhu, he hinau, me whakatupu ki te hua te ringaringa, me whakapakari ki te hua te kawariki. I shall fashion my own house. The support posts will be made from mahoe and patate, the ridgepole of hino, and the inhabitants shall be raised on ringaringa and strengthened by kawariki. Now, those timbers that Tāwhiao mentioned, they're not timbers that you would build a house with, no way. They are weak and meagre timbers. But what Tāwhiao was doing there was he was expressing humility, because at the time, the kingitanga was still a fledgling movement. Okay? The big massive colonial machine had ripped through Waikato. Okay? And our people were stripped of a lot of things. But Tāwhiao remembered the commitment that his father had made. So what he said by mentioning these timbers, he said, I'm going to build this thing, and I don't care who I've got with me in my corner. Whoever comes with me, I'm going to look after you, and you are going to look after me. So that's what he meant. So the genius of his kōrero, though, was that although they're meagre timbers, they actually provide wicked coverage, really, really good coverage. And another thing about these timbers is that when they are rubbed together, they make fire, and they make fire very, very quickly. What he was saying there was he was talking about his people and the people being efficient, and he knew that his people were going to be the strength of the kingitanga itself. Also, the genius of his kōrero when he mentioned ringaringa and kawariki. Hey, I know I'm preaching to some people here that will know exactly what ringaringa and kawariki are, but for those that don't, ringaringa is Pākehā term rock lily, I think. You wouldn't usually eat ringaringa, but when times were tough, people would go and get ringaringa. Ringaringa is carbohydrate rich, very starchy, so you can sustain it, but it's very, very bitter. So too are kawariki berries. Right? But kawariki berries are what our tupuna used to feed our tamariki to make them strong. Bitter, but strong. So you can see the genius in Tāwhiao's kōrero about humility, but I'm going to build something strong, and I'm going to build strong people. He spoke, of this metaphor, of this tongikura, as kupu aki for his people. The 2 uppermost levels are representative of the first, if not the first, of the tongikura Potatau Te Wherowhero mentioned when he was raised as king. He said, ko tō koutou atu mai Hawaii ki ko aunuku kai tangata. Ko tō koutou atu e nei anei ko iho o ngā mana. Ko tahi anō te kōhao tengi reo kuhuna i te miro mā, te miro pango me te miro whero. Kia mau ki te ture, te whakapono me te aroha. Hei aha te aha, hei aha te aha. The atua brought from Hawaii was uinuku kai tangata. From now on, your atua is iho o ngā mana. There is but one eye of the needle that the white, the black, and the red threads must pass. Hold fast to law, to faith, and to love. Nothing else matters, nothing else matters. And at that time, there was some more genius in his kōrero. Okay? He knew that as being raised as king, his job was to unite the people. So he needed to stop cannibalism. Okay? and being the rangatira and the son of the rangatira himself coming through the Tainui Whare Wānanga, he actually eschewed cannibalism. Didn't like it at all. So he needed to stop it. And this was an avenue for him to stop it happening. He also knew that when people were being killed and eaten, mana was being taken away. So that needed to stop as well. So by taking people's mana, okay, that would have ensured that we would i wehe tata. So what he'd done was he instructed his people to relinquish the influence of Uanuku Kai Tangata and to hold fast to the faith and the teachings of the missionaries who had come, but then also maintain the teachings of our other atua and the teachings of the Whare Wānanga. In his kōrero, he mentioned law, faith and love in that order. But the question was, whose law? The law of the Māori, the law of the Pākehā. Whose faith? The faith of the Māori, the faith of the Pākehā. And he mentioned aroha last, because you cannot question aroha. Aroha is aroha. Like I said before, ko tō koutou hoa haere, ko te aroha me te rangi Māori. Also, what this paparanga asserts is that if we uphold the kingitanga will protect us. It's a protective mechanism for all of us, not just of Waikato. Okay? Despite some of the kōrero that have happened in years gone by, us as Waikato, we still maintain that we are kaitiaki of this taonga, and it's a taonga for everybody. Then I've got here te paparanga o te wairuatanga. And this one directly addresses wairuatanga. Like many other iwi take, we are deeply connected to wairua, to our tupuna, and to our taiao. Tāwhiwhi Tāmau acknowledges that life and health begin with wairua, and it is a critical element of waiora. The wairua practices have been taught to our children in many ways. Waiata karakia haka e rā mea kato, kōrero. So the bottom layer is representative of the tariao, or the paimārire, from which is, like how I said before, the unofficial, official faith of the kingitanga. And the reason why I say that is because most faiths go through a registration process. Some of my koro in them through the 80s were asked did they want to register the paimārire or the tariao as a faith, and they said no. Because to register it means it'll go through a Pākehā system, and then the Pākehā will technically own our faith, and that was not going to happen. Tāwhia also said a tungi kura, ka whakahoki au tēnei taonga ki te tako o te maunga, takoto ana. Ka toimaha koutou, tiki nātu. I'm going to lay this taonga at the base of the mountain, where it shall remain. In times of need, fetch it. Which is why I have put paimārire and tariao at the base of this mountain. Secondary to that is that paimārire seeks to support all other hāhi and all other religions. Ngā hāhi, we put my Aotearoa, and the hāhi from outside of Aotearoa as well. Then the blue layer is the hāhi from outside of Tainui, of Waikato, and outside of Aotearoa. As Te Whero had mentioned to his people, go and learn those teachings. Go and learn the teachings of the other people. Because it is those people and their learnings that are going to help us. We can reciprocate that health and that guidance. At the time, there were 3 major faiths in the country. The Anglican Church, the Catholic Church, and there was another one, the Wesleyan Church, at the time. But it actually encompasses all the other ones who have come to our shores as well. And Tāwhia said, tērā no oku hoa kei ngā tōpito te ao, ko ngā humeka, ngā praki mete me ngā kāmura. My friends shall come from all points of the world. They are shoemakers, blacksmiths, and carpenters. Although he mentioned trades, he actually meant hāhi as well, knowing that the people from these trades were also people of these hāhi. Next up is, in the white, the black and the red, is the pononga that we have to Ranginui, Papatuanuku, and their tamariki, the Ira Atua, but then also our different kaitiaki of the taiao as well, and our tipua. Us as Māori, we know this, and it's been a consistent theme over the last couple of days, that connection to Atua, that connection to Papatuanuku and to taiao, and how important that is in our well-being. And then above that is Io Matua Kore, and the influence that Io Matua Kore has on us. E kore he atua, o kore tētahi atu I tū atu I aia. Nāna te ao I hanga, nāna te ao katoa I ranga. But in that kōrero of Io, everybody knows. Like I said, preaching to the converted here. In addition to the niho of the paparanga I just spoke about, represents te koha o te ngira. In the kōrero of kia mau ki te, kotahi no te koha o te ngira, that metaphor spoke as ihoa, io, as being that one eye of the needle. And then the taniwha itself, holding aloft the niho taniwha, represents us as individuals and our wairuatanga, which protects our wairua. And our role is to maintain and to uphold wairuatanga and wairuatanga practices. And then I've created a paparanga o te tinana. Now, I spoke about waiora being not solely about human individual health, and then also hinengaro, wairua, whānau have all been kind of interwoven through the other paparanga. But I had to make a tinana one, purely because for us to maintain the waiora and to pass on this knowledge and to share what we have, we actually have to do it in a healthy vessel. The vessel that we carry it all in needs to be healthy and it needs to be strong. So I've embedded the paparanga o te tinana within the model itself. The bottom, in purple, represents ngā hua Māori o te ao. Represents clean, healthy and natural eating. Some of you would have seen me sitting down the bottom there watching in that trolley there that had hua rākau and hua whenua. Don't worry, I was judging. I was judging who was not coming to that one. But Tāwhiwhi Tāmau promotes clean eating. Tāwhiwhi Tāmau promotes us eating clean, natural kai. Wai Māori as our first choice of inu. Minimising processed and high sugar kai. Instead going for, like our tupuna did, fish, birds, berries, aruhe, kumara, era mea katoa, other types of kaimona. Early European reports illustrated the remarkable physical condition of our people and of our tupuna, and they had attributed that to kai, to the kai that our people were eating. Then they come over with their huka and all their things like that, and they gave something that Waikato people called it kai kinikini. So isn't that what kai kinikini is? Okay. A play on that is kai kanikani. Kai that dances on your table, jelly. So they called it kai kinikini, but they understood that this stuff was high in sugar and no good. And we know how delicious it is. We do, okay? But they attributed kai kinikini to also being the demise of Māori way back then, way back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, okay? And that kino is still getting us today. Taku ino atu ki a tātou, me whakarongo ki ngā kōrero o rātou mā. Tāwhiwhi Tāmau also encourages us, and some people are doing it now, to return to whānau-based food growing practices, not only for benefits of our tinana, but to build connection with each other, to our taiao and to our atua, and sharing the knowledge of our tupuna. The next level up is te kore pā kahukahu. I'm not sure that our tupuna would have described it as metabolic conditioning or metabolic pathway conditioning. Basically, though, it's using our bodies as the primary vessel for our wellness. All the ings, running, skipping, jumping, swimming, all those types of ings. Using the solid nutritional background or foundations that have been created to build our cardiovascular and our respiratory functions by doing vigorous and energetic movement at different intensities. Okay? So I know that some of us tend to go for a walk and think that going for a walk is enough. But then I also know that some of us just go and do sprint-based stuff and think that's enough. Actually, it's about balance. Okay? It's about balance of getting across the whole gambit. Using our DNA, using what we've been given to move our bodies. And there's some kōrero here in Tarawa, some amazing kōrero of Hememoa swimming across to Mokoia, to Tānekai. Other kōrero of Hatupatu running away from Kurangaituku. Okay? It's in us. Okay? We just have to release it. Also, above that, in red is te tinana pā kahukahu. For those gym junkies in here, you'll know what I mean when I'm talking calisthenics. Push-ups, sit-ups, burpees, pull-ups, all those types of things. Using our bodies as that first form of resistance. Okay? We need to get our bodies right by lifting ourselves first before we go and start chucking other things around in the gym. Okay? Get our bodies moving, our bodies first. Because then, okay, we'll build strong, powerful physiques and structures. Then we can go to te taonga pā kahukahu, which is the external objects. Now, when you think of external objects in training, it's easy to think weights and bars and kettlebells and dumbbells and era o ngā bells katoa. Okay? However, it also includes skipping ropes, stretch bands, all that kind of stuff. But then that also includes waka kōpapa, paihikara, all those things as well. Okay? Get in a hurry up here. But then it also includes our taonga Māori. Taiaha, poi, patu, tirako, tefa, all those things as well. And by engaging with those, that's engaging with a different level of wairuatanga in our kore tinana. Engaging with the tupuna of those mea, of those tapu. And then the last paparanga is the paparanga o te taiao. And I don't have it in a ordered structure like the other ones have, because who are we to tell the taiao what to do? The taiao doesn't conform to us, we conform to it. We are the teina, the taiao is the tuakana. Okay? And as the teina, we have that responsibility to tiaki hu, to tiaki taiao, to tiaki papa tuanuku. And then the last thing I'm going to introduce, and I promise I'll be quick, was throughout this the whole process. When I was interviewing people and having kōrero with people, they spoke about our tupuna and they spoke about times gone by. And each of them had this look in their eye, almost like they were yearning to be there. They were yearning to be in that time of our tupuna. So we came up with the concept called tupuna guided living. And I've used tupuna guided living as opposed to two terms. The first being decolonisation, because even calling it decolonisation centres the coloniser and what we do. And I've steered away from the term re-indigenisation. I know some people use it. Okay, me personally, it gives, at once we were unindigenised. Okay. But by coining the term tupuna guided living, It's us taking the lessons and the mōhiotanga of our tupuna and applying them to our context now. Okay? I see that at this conference. I see all you as mātanga applying what our tupuna knowledge in the rongoā context. Okay? It actually warms my heart to know that there are so many people, okay, who are living tupuna guided just without knowing it, okay? Or without knowing what tupuna guided living is. It's applying their learnings. It's applying the practices of our tupuna. And I've got there in purple, removing the Pākehā prescribed mōwhiti and allowing ourselves time for our eyes to readjust and to see the world through Māori eyes. Taking off the kākahu of the Pākehā, these kākahu that do not fit, these kākahu that are not fit for purpose, and allowing ourselves to be draped in the korowai of our tupuna. For us as Māori, me hoki ati tātou ki te mātauranga, ki te mōhiotanga, me te māramatanga o tātou tupuna. Mā tātou, o tira mā rātou a tātou tamariki mokopuna me ngā reanga ki te haramai. And using their kiwaha, their tongikura, and their whakatauki as kupu aki for us to live a new way. Nō reira, tēnei au, he mokopuna tēnei no tūranga waiwai, o Waingaropa, o Taupiri Maunga, o Aotea, o te whanga Aotea, o Whaingaroa, o Kāwhia hoki. E tuku mihi atu ki a koutou katoa, mō koutou tainga mai, ki te rongo mai ki tēnei o ngā kōrero, nōku te honore ki te tohaine i o ngā kōrero i a koutou. Nō reira, koutou, aku tuakana, aku ruruhi, aku koroheke. Mai a ngārua wāhia, atu ki a koutou katoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.